In 1968, my dad died. I was 5. Truth be known, a lot had already happened in my life before that. I was born to a woman who couldn't keep me. I was given up. I went to an orphanage, foster care, and eventually I was adopted. Then, just shy of 4 years later, my dad died. A year later, in 1969, a man walked on the moon for the very first time. A lot can change in a year. A lot can change in a life. I don't think I've lived just one life. I think I've lived about a dozen of them so far, back to back to back inside of this one life. Sometimes we mistake a chapter for the whole book, the full story. I had this notion that I should land on a career and practice it and get good at it. You pick a field, you work hard, you get promoted, you get very good at it, and eventually you retire. It's just one straight line. I don't even know what I thought came next, but I decided that was an important chapter. I chose the Fortune 500 identity, and I remember that I invested a lot into that chapter. I studied hard. I learned a lot of skills. I became very good at what I did. I was recruited from one company to another. And I didn't stop there. I kept learning. I kept educating myself, taking classes, leadership training, travel, study, research, you name it. Eventually, I got to a really great place in my career. And then it was time for me to move on, to retire, I thought. That didn't work out, but that was the plan. And I remember I didn't think a lot of it at the time when I left my office and walked across the street to do the perfunctory turning in your badge and your credit card and conversation with human resources exit interview. There you have it. But I do recall the last thing I did was put my badge on the desk before I turned to walk out. And it occurred to me for a moment that in putting down that badge, I had walked away from a whole identity. When you're inside of a chapter, sometimes it feels like the whole book. It isn't. Thank God that wasn't the only life I got to have. It was a great life and I enjoyed it immensely. But for the majority of it, I was trapped in a very corporate space, working very hard, dedicating the majority of my time and energy to this one cause. My life has gotten much more expansive since. I never would have imagined it. I thought I was doing what I was supposed to do, the right thing. So drafts are just that. They're drafts, you know. I married the man of my dreams. Today, I'm happily single. Neither version of me was lying. I think we get to write a draft and walk around in it. Try different situations on, try different ideas, see what fits. Sometimes what fits so well becomes uncomfortable and it's time to move on. Growth is required. There's a need for change. Resist at your peril. Both things can be true at once. Here's the practical version of that for me. It's that if I'm driving down an icy road and my car ends up in a ditch, I call a tow truck. I do not sit there. I do not wonder how I got in the ditch. I do not ruminate over what I could have done differently. I call a tow truck. So don't get stuck in the story. Close the chapter. Move on. And nothing has to be wasted. Nothing has to be lost out of that experience. A job ends, a marriage ends. Sometimes it comes with some pretty drastic consequences. For me, there was this financial devastation. And then rebuilding comes. I believe all of our experiences add value to our lives. I know that every boardroom I ever walked into taught me something about how to lead. It also taught me a lot about myself and about people. I handled over 2 billion in sales annually, so I knew I could manage money, but I hadn't managed my own anyways. I took that confidence and took on my own personal finances and found that I could do an excellent job at it. I added skills to that, like learning how to improve a credit score in a hurry, how to leverage that with little to no income and make progress in my finances. I could teach a class on it. I have taught a class on it. I used that confidence that I had from the job and the experience of taking on my own finances and being successful to realize I could take other skills that I had and iterate on them. Skills that I had from my job, use them in new ways. I couldn't have bought all that merchandise or sold it to the general public if I couldn't sell ideas and products to my bosses first. And that took a fair amount of marketing and public relations. Bingo! I know marketing and public relations. I had a great attention to detail. I love a spreadsheet. That attention to detail led to me learning how to write code. My love of connecting teams in a workplace environment became super useful in networking, finding good fits, working with people towards mutually beneficial outcomes. I love connecting people, connecting internal and external constituents to one another to get the best outcome for the company, for the customer, for the client. I would actually say that's one of the skills that I most use even today. And it's something I take for granted. I remember I had a friend that owned a business and another friend that was starting a business, and I thought that the two of them should meet because they would have a lot in common and maybe there was an opportunity there. So I arranged a meeting, got together, and I was giving a little overview of you do this, you do that, and here's why I thought you'd make a great connection, and was kind of backing out as in like, I have this other job. And the guy with the business said, I thought your job was connecting people. That's what I see you doing all the time. I had never realized that it was not only just a natural gift and ability, but it was something I had honed and worked on. And it translated into a lot of other areas of my life. Marketing, websites, building a business from nothing, you name it. It goes on and on and on. I thought that the skills I learned throughout my career kind of belonged to that company, belonged to my job. My career was just where I happened to learn them. I made the mistake of confusing where I had learned the skill to what the skill was for. I find that just is a word that people use to shrink their gifts or others' gifts. I used to say I just organize things. I just help people figure stuff out. I just know how to bring people together and connect the right people. But the reason people kept asking me to just do this and just do that was because I was unusually good at it. I bet there's a lot of things that you dismiss as things that you just do that are true gifts that translate into a whole nother world. I have a friend, Natalie. She doesn't just make cookies. She makes these fantastic, gorgeous, decorated ice cookies. People go crazy for them. They Instagram them. They tell other people about them. They're delicious as well, and people want to buy them from her. Natalie makes fantastic ice cookies. She used to give them away. Now she's got an online bakery. She's developing a website. She's taking small steps towards iterating into something bigger. What do you already know how to do that you've dismissed as just part of the job, just a hobby, just something I do for fun? Whether you're organizing a household, a PTA meeting, a garden club, it doesn't matter. You can lead people. What do you already know that you could bring to a completely different chapter in your life? The other thing that I have fallen victim to is not knowing when to stop revising. I love this story from the movie 6 Degrees of Separation. It's a connections movie too, and as a natural connector, it appeals to me. But in one scene, the art dealer is telling a story about how he asked his children's second grade teacher, why is every child in this class a born Picasso, an absolutely brilliant artist? And the teacher says, because I know when to take the paintbrush away. Sometimes you don't put the paintbrush down because you're finished painting, but because you have to release it and see what happens next. It gives you more information when you put the brush down for a minute. Like I said, I struggle with this. I took classes for a year. I belonged to a lot of working groups, and I was full of not yets. People had told me I had something to say and that I had tools that I could provide to the world that would be helpful to other women, other people. And I said, it's just something that I do. I don't have a website built. I don't have a tagline. I don't have an Instagram account or a business account on Instagram. I didn't have anything ironed out. I had the whole podcast. It entirely existed as a draft. Finally, someone deadlined me. I had to launch the trailer. The craziest thing is, I really did have to launch that trailer. I had to launch that trailer so I could know what to write in the first episode and the second. And I launched it not because the trailer was ready, but because publishing it gave me something to react to. I do like this. I do believe this. This is a value I hold. This is a characteristic I think matters. This sounds like me. I had to hear it to know this doesn't sound like me. This doesn't feel like a fit. This doesn't seem like something I believe in or want to pursue or want to do. I learned more about my own journey by doing and taking action than I ever learned by considering it, planning it, organizing it. Launching before you're ready teaches what revising cannot do. Sometimes I forget that and I hang on to the paintbrush a little too long. But the publishing and the doing was the learning. And I've been committed to doing this ever since I committed to growing up late nearly 2 decades ago. In 1968, my dad died. And in 1969, a man walked on the moon. A lot can change in a year. A lot can change in a life. You are not on a fixed page. You're in the middle of your own draft, your own story. No version of you is lying. The question isn't whether the earlier draft was good enough, whether it's the final draft. The question is whether you're willing to keep writing and become the author of what comes next. I hope you do. I hope you decide to do that. If this episode resonated with you, I hope you come back next week because we're just getting started.